Hello and welcome back to the Mystery Theory. Today we are going to share one of those research, I guess, and I have a crinkly something on my table. But if you've been with me since the beginning, or if you were a fan of my podcast, then you probably will remember some of these different videos where we explore a little bit deeper into criminals and what we have in common with them, which is, in this case, our brain. I am not trying to say that these people are as bright as you are, but if you, like me, wonder what makes a difference in, or what's the difference between a criminal and myself, what happens inside somebody's brain, heart, soul, body when they make the decision of taking somebody's life, then this video, I think, will be for you as interesting as it is for me. As always, this is based on research, and specifically, because I think you should read it, the July 2022 Ideas and Discoveries magazine. The title is Marvels of the Mind. But let's talk about the secret false files of your memory. This was part of an experiment, and it even warns you here that you should continue reading at your own risk. It says that you may not be the same person you were when you started. So are you ready? At the end of this video, you will probably wonder, did I really do that? Did I really experience that? But before I share today's case, I want to say thank you for the patience. I am in my new studio without the last two walls, without the door, without finishing inside. The roof is almost done, but it still needs some work. So you're gonna hear lots of background noise, like birds, ducklings who like to look at me and scream from their pen. And you might hear the occasional baby goat. I have two in a humbling pen. If you're a jerk and you're proud, you go to the humbling pen for a couple of days. So, just a warning. Everyone is fine. They're happy, content. They're just making noises. Also, I would truly appreciate if you take a second to like this video. Go down where the comments are and say hi. Put an emoji. Share your thoughts about this video. Just say hello. And by doing so, you're helping the channel with the YouTube algorithm. My goal is to go back to 3 videos a week by August. So be patient with me. By the beginning of August, the studio is not gonna be ready, but I'll have some nice green screen with something dark and relaxing, and I'll be sitting in front of the camera so you can make fun of how many times I roll my eyes. Thinking I should put a stamp, so I'll do that in the comments if you wanted to skip to the video. Now, based on the study, neurologists are kind of alarmed because, according to this research, our memory is much more susceptible to manipulation than what they thought. According to this group of neurologists, every day our past gets recreated. And it turns out our parents might be the biggest contributors to those maybe not so true memories. But the question is, we're gonna start with the question and then explore the answer. How can a person remember a crime that never happened? Now, you today listening to this video, think about your parents, your tutor, whoever raised you and you trust and love. And they tell you, honey, you might not remember, but when you were younger, you committed a crime. Let's say you're in that position right now. At this point, investigator asks for your help, and you deny it. You don't remember ever doing that. You're not capable of doing that. But this investigator show you files that document what happened. In that file, you see your parents' testimony confirming that you did it. If your parents are somebody you admire and love and trust, why would they lie? So now you start to wonder, did it happen? Now, according to a study, it is normal for your subconscious to repress such events. Now, in this case, the investigator tells you we are working on this together. You may not remember it, but we will help you. Now, the scary part of this scenario is that according to Julia Shaw and Stephen Porter, who are psychologists, they had this experiment, I guess, where they used this technique and implanted false memories in 70% of participants during an experiment. They even managed to get them to confess to a crime that they never committed. There's this woman that she even recalled, even though she never did, 130 details about the time she attacked another girl with a rock back when she was 14. This event was invented by the psychologist and implanted in her brain. But then she remembered, quote unquote, remember that did happen, and that even the police had to be called in. According to the experts, it was easy to change these people's memory. The conclusion is your memory, my memory, and most people's memories can be manipulated. So the theory is that for some people, their entire identity consists of far more false memories that they could ever imagine. So, how does our brain work? Well, despite common beliefs, research shows that our brain does not function like a camera that records video and that we can play back later. Remembering, according to this research, is more of a quote-unquote creative process. I quote, "We shape our impressions from a wide assortment of times and places into something that feels like a memory." This is a quote by Elizabeth Loftus, who is a cognitive psychologist at the University of California, Irvine, and she's been researching memory for decades. Now, the big problem we encounter is that both imagined and real experiences are stored within the same region of the brain. So how can we tell the difference? They have the same type of raw material, which are bits of compounded data fragments. So how does it work? Well, since it's stored in the same part of the brain, sometimes we're not able to differentiate between fantasy and reality based solely on the content of a story we remember. Now, even in a brain scan, real and false memories look the same. Most of the time, we ask ourselves, does that make sense? Because it's hard to tell the difference between reality and fantasy. In the end, whether we committed a crime, if the traffic light was red, all of that is a subconsciously made decision in some occasions. So when we retell the story, our brain turns into a movie theater playing in our brain. Sometimes can turn into what experts call a documentary memory, or it could be a fiction memory. But that's not all. Every time we retrieve one of those memories, it gets altered. This is based on our mood at the moment, because of new information we have that we didn't have at the time the memory was formed, and it's almost like a computer file that we keep changing, and only the latest version is accessible. According to this, a person remembers an event differently depending on who is present to listen to the recollection. Our memory alters the events during the first recounting of it, but as we repeatedly tell our story, they start to change. We all believe that our sense of self is based on our own experience. But the opposite is actually the case. When though all things must pass, at least our memories are ours, right? Well, it's kind of the opposite, because remembering is a social process. Memory, quote unquote, mistakes can be corrected with new details because they fit well. Sometimes we can feel a memory gap that needs to be filled. The more coherent story is the one that will be in our memories. So, these experts concluded with the idea that our memories are like, or I should say, our past is like a Wikipedia page. Yes, we can visit and edit it at any time, but so can other people. All we ever see is the latest version. So based on this research, how much of our lives has never actually taken place? 1, 10, 40%? No one really knows at this point. But they compared our memories to, let's say, a dollar bill. If our memories were dollar bills, there would be plenty of counterfeit bills in circulation. It is easier to remember things we did yesterday, and we can still change it with a new perspective today. But the more time that passes, the foggier that the memory turns, and the more or the need to add to those blank spaces. Researchers from 12 American universities spent several years examining the way the same group of people remember what happened on 9/11. You would think that something as terrible as that, it's been seared into many people's memories. But this research showed that surprisingly, 40% of the 2,100 participants had changed their story over the course of time. Most of them within 1 year of the event. As an example, some remembered being out on the street instead of in the office. Others who had watched the event on television said they'd been told about it by a friend. Our memories can be deceiving. But what triggers that deceit? Well, strong emotions most of the time, such as fear. So you change some details, ignore others. It really changes what happened in your head compared to what happened in reality. When we look back on our lives before the age of 3, virtually none of our personal memories are accurate. All of our memories from that age are based on what our parents have told us. Many people will insist that they remember exactly what happened. But at that early age, the hippocampus, which helps with process the information from short-term memory to long-term memory, is not developed enough to help preserve these events. But the more your mother and father remind you of that accident, that summer afternoon, that Christmas play, the more blur the boundary between facts and implanted reality grows. In the end, your fantasy becomes reality. The reality that our parents remember experiencing. But a single false memory can change your life forever. Could you have a false memory of committing a murder? Well, let me tell you about Damon. At around 4:40 a.m., Damon Thibodeau seals his fate. He was interrogated for 9 hours. So the 22-year-old admits to having raped and strangled his cousin Crystal Champagne. This allegedly happened near her home in Louisiana. What you don't know is that he was being interrogated for 9 hours, but he's been at the station for 35 hours without sleep. So now he's under additional mental pressure by telling him he has failed a lie detector test. Police say that his alibi is a lie, and they confront him with what they claim is a verified version of the crime story. In the end, he remembers a crime he never committed. He later said, quote, "I didn't know I'd done it, but I've done it." He was then convicted and sentenced to death. He spent 16 years on death row in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. Now, in the year 2012, they do a DNA test, and it's proven he is innocent. Now, Damon is one of about 300 prisoners to be released after DNA evidence has shown an error. In the US, false confessions play a role in 1 out of 4 wrongful convictions that are overturned by DNA evidence. This interrogation room turns into a place where false memories are implanted in this suspect's memories. Physical violence is not at all necessary for an interrogator to obtain the answers he is seeking. Sometimes a single question is enough to change somebody's memory permanently. Some of the techniques used are the big questions, like instead of asking, "What did you see?" or "Did you see a car?" It can easily be implanted into your brain that a non-existent vehicle was there, even in a witness memory. There are no statistics to indicate how often this kind of abuse takes place, deliberately or not. But as you can imagine, interrogators need a suspect who prosecute. And these manipulation tactics are more effective than any others, because at some point the suspects begin to believe the suggested story, or at least they start to wonder what the truth actually is. And if you're thinking this is so out there. Let me tell you that this same method works for everyday life. There was this study at the University of California, Irvine, and after the participants had been convinced that back when they were kids, they had once eaten strawberry ice cream at a birthday party and that they got sick. So, in the end, they almost rejected strawberry ice cream. Also, a pleasant memory of asparagus was implanted in the study subjects, and in the end, more people said that they started eating more asparagus. So, what does this mean? We cannot trust our own past. It is suspect because a question, a conversation, a photo, a news report, anything has the power to rewrite it in our memory. That is why these experts cautious or urges us all to be cautious. Quote, "If I have learned one thing from decades of memory research, it is this. Just because someone tells you something and they say it with confidence, in great detail, with a whiff of emotion, that doesn't mean that that what they're saying really happened." It is a realization that could undermine your trust in the basic elements of your own personality. Now, it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't share a small anecdote. When I read this article and, I extracted the most interesting parts to share with you, I remember something about my own childhood that I've always remembered. But the funny thing is that I clearly remember that it happened when I was 3. I was an only child for 5 years. I thought I'd be the only child forever. Now I love my sister and I wouldn't know what to do with my life if she wasn't here. But back then, I thought I was the thing. I was the shit. And nobody, could replace me. I was so overconfident, and I'm talking about a 3-year-old. Now there's pictures of me doing things that now I cringe, but one of the things I clearly remember is reading when I was 3. My parents devoted my bedtime to read me stories. And back when I was born 82, so since I was a baby, they would read stories to me. And I remember sitting on my bed, maybe I was 3, I don't know, but being a little girl and my dad reading me all my books. It wasn't like it is here that you can go to a library and check out books. And books where I'm from are expensive. So expensive. They are sold in this fancy Barnes and Noble, what it would be here, Barnes and Noble, but smaller. And you could spend in a thicker book like, I don't know, like a day's work. You know, you go work for 8 hours and that's how much the book is going to cost you. But my dad would buy me encyclopedias and books and all the things that he could afford, and because I needed to keep my brain entertained. But then I started looking at the words that they were in this book, and it was what was it? Sleeping Beauty. And it was an old Disney book, and I remember the images, and I remember, each page. So I started memorizing the words in the book until I started to realize that those same words were in another book. And so I asked my dad to read me the other book, and by the age of 3, my mom was telling everyone how I knew how to read, because I would sit and with my finger point to each word and read it. What she didn't know is I memorize. L-A is la. P-R-I-N-C, and you get the deal. All those letters together spell princesa. And I didn't have to vocalize the words. I just had to look at them and I knew what they were. And I clearly remember sitting on the front steps of this house and reading my books every morning while my mom worked in a small it was like a convenience store that my mom and my aunt owned. I remember my neighbors walking by and telling my mom, "Oh, how smart is she? How old is she? She's not in school yet." And I remember asking my mom more than once, "Mom, is this true? Do I remember this right? Am I making things up in my head?" Because as I was sharing with you in this article, sometimes if things don't make sense, we don't recognize them as truth. And my mom told me, "You were 3 and that happened." Now I like to believe, let me say this, I read this article and I understand more about some of the horrible things that happen in a police station with suspects that are really not guilty. Opened my eyes to a lot of confessions with no proof. But I want to end this video and say that although I understand what they are saying as far as how you can change your memories, I believe that you can retell the story differently with the passing of time. In my case, I can give you a better background of what happened or what was happening at the time. But the memory is still the same. I am sitting in this yellow house by the convenience store, and the one step that you have in the front door, there's some grass around me. I can see the grass, I can see the gate. But today I can tell you the background. How I could memorize the words instead of vocalizing and reading how we learn to read. So is my memory changing? Well, no. It's still the same memory. I can still see myself. But today, I can tell you that memorizing words is not reading. So maybe in the past, I was able to tell people that I was reading by the age of 3. When today, I can clearly see that it wasn't 100% reading. And if you would have given me a very long word that I've never seen before, I probably couldn't read it. So I agree with these experts. Your memory changes with time. But I don't think you're lying. And I don't think you're trying to spice things up. I think that with time, you can give the same memory a background. You will understand a 3-year-old better when you're 30 than when you were 12. So I disagree with these studies that say that we're able to switch our memories according to the people that are surrounding us. I disagree. I believe that the background you would give a 3-year-old when telling a story is completely different to the background that you would give a 30-year-old listening to the same story. If I sat down and explained a 3-year-old, I was able to memorize words. That probably is something that they don't care to know about. That's my dog realizing I'm back here. He wants to come. Have another one by me. It's okay. It's okay. I'll be right there. I know. So, I politely disagree. And you guys know I've done this before. I understand that studies are what keep us advancing in science, but I also understand that if you really study human nature, And if you're a human being telling the same story to different people in different ages or in different stages in life, that story would change from one person to the next. Are you lying? No. But what could be relevant to a 60-year-old person may not be as relevant to a 3-year-old who you would give a simple story, simple enough that they would understand it. Sadly, I do believe that it's easy to implant ideas in somebody's mind, which is completely different about our own memories from our childhood or events that happened to us. So, think about this. Next time you hear this scenario where police got a confession after 5 days of poor sleep or not eating for a couple of days, which is something that it's been known to happen, not legally, but it happens. And think about the possibility of innocent people rotting in jail because of somebody being smart enough to find what they need, somebody to blame it on. This could be the person that committed the crime, convincing you that you had a bigger role. This could be the police interrogating a bad lawyer, a really good lawyer. So no, don't think you're a liar. No, you're not making stuff up. In my opinion, as we grow older, we understand things differently and we give a different perspective on something that is a memory that maybe a few years ago you told somebody else in a different way. I really don't like when these studies come out and then all of a sudden they warn you will never think the same, or well, you can show me the research, you can show me the numbers, but in the end you and I have a working brain and can make a decision based on the studies. Sadly, it's a real thing for true crime cases where the things can really change your life forever. Like in this case for Damon, solitary confinement for 16 long years, and he was a 22-year-old in the year 1996, only to get exonerated 16 years later. How do you get your life back? What damage the 16 years of solitary confinement did to this guy? Do you have the answer? Because I don't. But I would have gone insane. I, like that 3-year-old me, need constant brain like stimulation. I need a book, I need a movie, I need a song. And although I could be alone because I'm an introvert, I think 16 years of loneliness would have completely driven me insane. What do you think about this information? Do you think that this is still happening? Do you think that there is still people out there innocent? Do you think it's as easy to implant these memories? I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Thank you for being here today, guys. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. And I'll talk to you guys in my next video with a new true crime case that is part of the Solved series. So I hope that you join me. Thanks for watching. Good night.